Dear beloved, we want to let you know that your willing decision to be part of this growing community is recognized as a true act of love, a beautiful choice to support individuals as they share their life journeys, experiences, and testimonies. Be rest assured that here, you will find real-life testimonies that can inspire transformation, strengthen your faith, and encourage you in times of need. We also kindly ask that you engage with our videos, like, comment, and share, as your interaction helps this community of believers continue to grow and reach others with God's love. God bless you richly. I was born in Istanbul, a city that glows with both history and faith. My parents were devoted Muslims, gentle, prayerful, and kind. From the earliest days of my life, love was all I knew. My mother would wake me each morning with a smile, her soft hands rubbing my back as she whispered morning prayers. My father, though a busy businessman, never failed to sit with me before breakfast, telling me that I was his treasure and that Allah had blessed them with a precious daughter. Our home was filled with warmth. On weekends, we would visit the old market streets of Istanbul. My father would buy me sweets and call it a gift of joy. My mother loved taking me to the seaside. We would watch the sunset and she would tell me how important it was to always listen to my heart and to never be afraid to ask questions. I remember one particular evening at the seashore. She turned to me and said that true faith must make the heart peaceful, not fearful. I didn't understand it then, but those words later became a lamp in my dark days. My parents never forced their choices on me. When I finished high school, they gave me the freedom to choose where and what to study. It was unusual because many of my friends didn't have such freedom. Most of their parents had already planned their future. But mine trusted me. They said, "Salima, you must follow what will make your soul alive." After much thinking, I decided to study psychology. I had always been curious about the human mind and why people behave the way they do. I wanted to understand pain, joy, love, and fear, all the deep emotions that live inside people. When I found a good university in the Philippines that offered the course I wanted, my parents were happy for me. My mother kissed my forehead, and my father hugged me tightly, saying he was proud that his daughter was chasing knowledge across the seas. Leaving Istanbul was both exciting and emotional. My parents stood at the airport waving at me, tears in their eyes but smiles on their faces. I promised to make them proud. I didn't know then that this journey would not only shape my career but change my soul forever. When I arrived in the Philippines, everything felt new. The university campus was large and green, filled with students from different countries. I felt free for the first time, like a bird that had left its cage. My parents called often, checking on me, reminding me to pray, study hard, and stay faithful. I always promised them I would. At first, I lived a quiet life. I followed all my Islamic routines, prayers 5 times a day, fasting when I needed to, wearing my hijab with pride. I joined a small Muslim students group that met on weekends. But as I studied psychology, something began to stir inside me. I started to see how human behavior and belief are deeply connected. I noticed how fear can shape a person's faith, and how many people never question what they believe because they are taught that questioning is a sin. Slowly, I began to think about Islam in a way I never had before. I realized that some parts of it seemed to close the mind rather than open it. I noticed 4 things especially. First, it discouraged asking questions that challenged tradition. I saw that if anyone asked why too many times, they were quickly told to stop or were seen as disrespectful. Second, it demanded blind obedience to religious leaders, even when their actions or words didn't make sense. Third, it limited women's freedom to make choices about their own lives, dressing, and dreams. And fourth, it placed fear above love. Fear of punishment, fear of dishonor, fear of disobedience. These thoughts didn't come overnight. They grew quietly in me, like seeds under the soil. I tried to push them away, telling myself I was only overthinking. But every class, every new idea, every conversation with people of other faiths opened another window in my heart. I met Christians who spoke of a God who loves freely and personally, and though I didn't understand everything they said, I could feel peace in their eyes. Many nights, I would sit by my window watching the stars and whisper to myself, "If truth is one, why are there so many walls between us?" The more I studied, the more I realized that the human mind was meant to explore, to seek, to discover, not to be imprisoned by fear or rules. When I completed my studies, I felt grateful but also unsettled. I had learned so much about people, but now I was beginning to question what I truly believed. My parents were so proud when I graduated. My mother said she couldn't wait for me to come home and start a new life. My father began talking about marriage, smiling whenever he mentioned it. But deep inside, I wasn't ready. When I returned to Istanbul after my graduation from the Philippines, my parents welcomed me with open arms, joy lighting their faces. My mother prepared my favorite meal, spiced rice with lamb, and my father invited close family and friends to celebrate my return. Laughter filled the air, and for a moment, I felt like a little girl again, safe and loved in my parents' home. But deep within me, something had changed. I had questions I could not share. During dinner, my mother gently asked, "Salima, are you ready to think about marriage now?" Her voice was warm, but her eyes searched mine for an answer. My father smiled proudly, adding that a few good families had already made inquiries about me. I hesitated before answering. I told them that I wanted to continue my studies, to pursue a master's degree in psychology. I explained that I was still young, that I wanted to grow more before thinking about marriage. My mother looked at my father and they both nodded. They had always trusted my decisions. My father said, "If that is what your heart wants, then you have our blessing." After weeks of searching and preparing, I was accepted into a university in California. I was excited but nervous again. Another new country, another journey. When the day came for me to travel, my parents came with me to the airport. My mother kissed my forehead and said, "Go, my daughter, and make your dreams real. May Allah guide your steps." California was a different world entirely. The streets were full of color and sound. People from every background walked side by side, and everyone seemed free to live how they wanted. My classes were intense, but I loved every moment. I studied the deeper parts of human behavior, how thoughts, beliefs, and emotions shape our actions. Many times, I found myself comparing what I learned to what I had been taught as a child. I saw that faith, when guided by fear, can close the heart. But faith, when guided by love, can heal it. I didn't yet understand where I was heading, but I felt that something greater than me was gently leading me toward truth. I couldn't name it yet, but I could feel it. When I finished my master's degree, I felt proud again, but I also felt restless. I knew something was missing inside me. Still, I returned home to Istanbul, ready to face the next chapter of my life. Only 1 month after I returned, a young man named Jaffer came to our home with his parents. They were a respected Muslim family, known for their long line of scholars. Jaffer was polite, confident, and well-educated. My parents liked him immediately. They later asked me quietly if I would consider him. I had no reason to refuse. He was kind, and our families matched in values and respect. And so I said yes. Our wedding day was grand and filled with joy. My parents smiled through their tears, happy that their only daughter was now beginning her own family. The first year of our marriage was peaceful. Jaffer and I loved each other deeply. He was gentle in words and respectful in actions. He often called me his gift from Allah. We spent evenings walking together in the garden behind our home, talking about life, our dreams, and the kind of family we hoped to raise. He told me he wanted to follow in his father's footsteps and one day serve as an imam. I was proud of him and supported his goals with all my heart. But as months passed, our joy slowly began to fade. We tried to start a family, but nothing happened. At first, we didn't worry. We told ourselves that time would make things right. But as the years began to pass, Jaffer grew more anxious, and I grew more afraid. We visited doctors, prayed, and fasted, hoping for a miracle. Then one afternoon, the doctor gave us the news I had feared most. I had a problem with conception. The silence in that hospital room felt heavy. Jaffer said nothing as we drove home. That evening he barely spoke to me. Days turned into weeks, and our closeness began to crumble. My heart broke watching the distance grow between us. I tried to comfort him, but he looked at me with quiet disappointment, as if I had failed him and our future. After a few months, he married another woman. He said it was his right, and that perhaps she would give him the child I couldn't. I didn't argue. I cried silently every night, holding onto my pillow as though it could keep my heart from falling apart. A year later, Jaffer became the Imam after his father's death. That same year, his second wife gave birth to a son. The whole family celebrated. I smiled on the outside, but inside, I felt invisible. Soon after, Jaffer took another wife, and then another. By our 6th year of marriage, there were 4 wives in the house. I was the first, but also the loneliest. The house that once echoed with laughter was now filled with tension and rivalry. The other wives avoided me, and Jaffer hardly spoke to me except when necessary. I began to spend most of my time alone in my room, reading, studying, and writing. My books became my only friends. I returned to my notes in psychology and began researching about the mind again, how people cope with pain, rejection, and faith. It was the only thing that gave me a sense of peace. One evening, after hours of studying, I fell asleep at my desk. That evening, something happened that changed everything. That night, I fell into a deep, strange sleep. I didn't even know when my head dropped onto the table beside my books. The room was quiet, and the air around me felt still, too still. Then suddenly, I found myself standing in a place I didn't recognize. The sky glowed softly, and everything around me shines like golden mist. My heart pounded, and I knew I was not dreaming an ordinary dream. Before me stood someone clothed in brightness, and though I could not see his face clearly, I felt peace flowing from his presence. It was as though the air itself was alive. He revealed to me that he was Jesus. I froze in awe and fear, unable to speak. But his presence brought calm into my heart. He took me somewhere. It felt like a journey through light, and then I found myself standing before a massive building, beautiful beyond words. The building looked like a mansion made of shining stones, its windows glowing like the morning sun. I walked inside, and there I saw many children and teenagers. They were beautiful, innocent, and full of life, but something was terribly wrong. Their faces looked pale and weak. They were starving, yet there was no food anywhere in the great house. They stretched out their hands, but there was nothing to feed them. The sight broke my heart. As I looked around, confused and tearful, he revealed to me that these children represented hungry souls, people starving for truth, love, and spiritual food. He let me know that I was being called to feed them, not with bread, but with knowledge and truth that could set them free. My heart trembled as I tried to understand. I felt small, unworthy, and afraid. Then, in a moment, everything disappeared. I woke up suddenly, gasping for air. My heart raced, and I could still feel warmth all around me, as if his presence had not yet left the room. I sat still for a long time, trying to make sense of what I had seen. Tears rolled down my cheeks. I whispered, "Who am I, and why would Jesus show me this?" From that night onward, I could not stop thinking about the vision. I read, I searched, and I questioned. I tried to find meaning in my old beliefs, but nothing seemed to explain what had happened. I knew that if Jaffer ever found out I was studying anything about Jesus, it would bring trouble. Life in the Imam's house could not tolerate such curiosity. So, after many nights of thought, I made a quiet decision. I went to Jaffer and spoke to him with humility and calmness. I told him that I wanted a divorce. I didn't tell him about the vision. I simply said that our marriage was without peace, that he had already moved on with others, and that I wanted to start anew. 3 days later, he granted the divorce. It was over, just like that. I packed my things quietly, and with a heart full of both sadness and hope, I returned to my parents' home. If you haven't subscribed yet, we'd love for you to be part of this journey. Our community is growing, and it's filled with people who, like you, are searching for truth and hope. As you listen to this powerful story of transformation, we'd love for you to be part of the conversation. Share where you're watching from and what stands out to you in this journey. Your thoughts and reflections aren't just comments. They help shape a genuine dialogue around experiences that have the power to change lives. When I arrived, my mother met me at the door. She looked at me, and tears immediately filled her eyes. She ran to me, hugged me tightly, and cried. I cried too, as all the pain I had hidden for years poured out. My father joined us, gently patting my back, saying, "It will be all right, my daughter. You're home now. Stop crying." Their love was a healing balm to my heart. But deep inside, I knew that something far greater than human comfort was calling me. In the weeks that followed my return home, I tried to act normal for my parents' sake. My mother would cook my favorite dishes again and tell me to rest, saying that I needed peace after everything I had gone through. My father tried to make me smile with gentle stories and evening walks by the river. But deep inside, I couldn't find peace. The vision I had seen would not leave my mind. Every night, before sleeping, I saw the mansion, the starving children, and that radiant presence that had told me to feed them. I knew that what I had seen was real, and that it meant something far greater than I could understand. I tried to pray the way I had been taught in Islam, but my words felt empty, as if they didn't reach anywhere. There was a deep hunger in my soul, a hunger for truth. I needed to know who Jesus truly was, and why he had come to me. I began to search secretly online. Late at night, when everyone was asleep, I would sit with my laptop, reading stories, watching testimonies, and listening to people talk about their faith in Jesus. Some said he was the Son of God. Some said he was only a prophet. Others said he was both divine and human. The more I read, the more questions filled my mind. I didn't want to be deceived, but I also couldn't deny what I had experienced. One night, I found myself whispering, "Jesus, if that was really you, please help me understand." I didn't hear any voice, but I felt peace spread through my heart like a gentle wave. From that moment, I knew my search wasn't just curiosity, it was a calling. After a few months, I told my parents that I wanted to continue my studies, this time to pursue a postmaster's program in clinical psychology, focusing on human behavior and faith. I said it would help me recover from the pain of my marriage and give me direction again. My parents, thinking it was a good idea, supported me wholeheartedly. They said a change of environment would help me heal. This time, I chose Canada. Deep down, I wasn't just going there to study. I was hoping to meet someone who could help me understand what I had seen, someone who knew the Jesus who came to me. My mother hugged me at the airport, reminding me to take care of myself and stay faithful. My father smiled, though his eyes were sad to see me travel again. When I arrived in Canada, I rented a small apartment near my university and began my studies. The people were kind, and I started to settle down. Yet, even in my classes, I found my thoughts drifting back to Jesus. Every time I read about healing the human mind, I remembered the peace I had felt in his presence. One evening, after finishing a long day at school, I decided to take a walk. I found myself standing in front of a church building. It was quiet, the lights inside dim, but something about it drew me in. I pushed the door open and stepped inside. The moment I stepped inside the church, I felt something I had never felt before. The air was still, yet full of warmth. The lights were dim, but they gave a soft glow that made the whole place feel safe. I walked quietly to the back row and sat down. My heart was beating fast. I didn't know what I was doing there, but something inside me whispered that I was where I needed to be. At the front of the church, a man was on his knees praying. I didn't want to disturb him, so I waited. His prayer was quiet, but even from where I sat, I could feel the peace that surrounded him. After some minutes, he stood up and noticed me. He smiled gently and walked over. "Hello," he said kindly. "You're new here." I nodded and softly said, "Yes. I just came in." He smiled again and told me his name was Pastor Silas. I could see kindness in his eyes, the same kind of peace I had felt in that vision. I hesitated for a moment, then told him I wanted to talk if he had time. He led me to his small office beside the main hall and offered me a seat. I began to talk slowly. I told him about my life in Istanbul, how I grew up in a loving Muslim home, how my parents gave me every freedom to choose my path, and how I had studied psychology in the Philippines and later in California. I shared my struggles in marriage, my pain of childlessness, and how my husband took other wives. I told him everything, even the vision of Jesus and how I had been searching for answers ever since. As I spoke, he listened without interrupting, his face calm and understanding. When I finished, he gently asked me to wait, then called his wife, his assistant, and the assistant's wife to join us. They came into the office with warm smiles, and I felt no judgment, only care. They offered me a drink from the small fridge in the office, and we sat together like family. They asked me gentle questions, helping me express what I truly felt. I told them how empty I had felt despite all my knowledge, and how one vision had changed everything I thought I knew. Pastor Silas then spoke to me about the love of Jesus, not a love built on fear, but one that frees the heart. He explained that Jesus reveals himself to those who seek truth with an honest heart. He told me that I was not lost, but called. The others nodded and smiled as tears rolled down my cheeks. For the first time in my life, I felt seen, accepted, and deeply loved, not for what I had done, but for who I was. After a while, they prayed for me. They didn't use loud voices or forceful words. It was gentle, peaceful, and full of love. I felt something warm flow inside me, and my heart felt lighter than ever before. That night, they told me I was safe in Christ, that He would walk with me from that day onward. I left the church with tears of joy, feeling like I had found home. A few days after my first visit to the church, Pastor Silas called to check on me. His voice was kind, and he said they were praying for me. That made me smile. For the first time in a long while, someone was praying for me, not because they pitied me, but because they cared. He invited me to come again on Sunday, and I agreed. When Sunday came, I dressed simply and went to the church early. The people welcomed me with open hearts. Some hugged me, others smiled and said, "God bless you." I didn't understand everything about the songs or the prayers, but I could feel peace everywhere. When they sang, I felt like heaven was close. The words spoke of love, freedom, and grace. I couldn't stop the tears that ran down my face. After the service, Pastor Silas and his wife spoke with me privately again. They explained more about salvation, that Jesus came to bring life and peace to every person, no matter their background or past. They said I could start a new life through him, that I didn't have to carry the weight of my past anymore. I didn't have all the answers yet, but I knew this was truth. My heart kept whispering, "This is what you have been searching for." So I made my decision. I told them I wanted to give my life to Jesus. That evening, they prayed with me again. As they laid their hands gently on me, I felt peace fill every part of my being. It was like the walls around my heart finally fell down. I began to cry, but this time, they were not tears of pain, they were tears of release. I knew that Jesus had truly come into my life. A week later, I was baptized. The church members gathered near a small pool behind the building. I wore a simple white robe, and the air was cool and calm. Pastor Silas prayed and said that baptism was a sign of dying to the old life and rising to a new one. When I stepped into the water, I closed my eyes. As he gently lowered me under, it felt like every pain, fear, and memory of the past was being washed away. When I came out of the water, I felt new, clean inside and out. Everyone clapped and sang a song of joy. I looked up to the sky and whispered in my heart, "Thank you, Jesus." After that day, my life changed. I was given a timetable for Bible study, prayer meetings, worship sessions, and fellowship gatherings. Everything was arranged to help me grow in faith. I learned how to pray not from fear but from love. I began to understand that God wasn't distant or harsh. He was near, gentle, and always listening. As I spent time reading the Bible, the vision I had seen started to make sense. I realized that the children I had seen represented people in spiritual hunger, people like I once was, starving for truth and love. I understood now that Jesus was calling me to help others find Him, to feed them with His word and love. The months after my baptism became the most beautiful and peaceful season of my life. Every morning I woke up early, prayed, and read my Bible before going to school. My studies in psychology began to feel different. I no longer looked at the human mind only through science, but through the eyes of faith. I saw how love, forgiveness, and hope could heal people deeper than any medicine could. The church quickly became my second family. Pastor Silas and his wife treated me like their own daughter. They guided me, prayed with me, and helped me understand God's Word. I joined the Bible study classes 3 times a week, and little by little, my understanding grew stronger. Each day, I discovered something new about Jesus. His kindness, his patience, and his endless love for the world. One Sunday, during worship, I remembered the vision again, the mansion and the starving children. I could almost hear their cries in my heart. Suddenly, it felt clear what Jesus had revealed to me that night years ago. He had called me to feed his children, not with food, but with truth, encouragement, and love. I was being prepared for this all along. I shared this with Pastor Silas after service, and he smiled. He told me that when God gives a vision, he also gives strength to fulfill it. He encouraged me to start helping with the youth ministry. At first, I was nervous. I didn't think I knew enough. But he reminded me that what people need most isn't perfection. It's love and truth spoken with sincerity. So I joined the youth ministry team. The first time I spoke to the teenagers, my hands trembled. But as I began to talk, I felt the Holy Spirit give me peace. I told them about hope, about how pain can become strength, and about how Jesus changes hearts. The teenagers listened with shining eyes. Some came to me afterward, saying that my story helped them believe that God could still love them even when life felt broken. That day, I went home and cried, not out of sadness, but gratitude. I finally understood that my pain had a purpose. Every tear, every rejection, every lonely night had led me here, to a place where I could help others find the peace I had found. 3 months later, Pastor Silas asked me to lead the youth ministry fully. It felt unreal, but I accepted with joy. Now I teach teenagers not just in our church, but in nearby youth gatherings and schools too. I share my story whenever I'm invited, reminding people that no one is too far gone for God to reach. The same Jesus who met me in my loneliness can meet anyone, anywhere, anytime. And every time I stand before young people, I remember the mansion in my vision and those hungry children. I know now that I am doing what he asked of me. I am feeding his children with his truth. As I look back over my journey, from a loving Muslim home in Istanbul to a new life in Christ here in Canada, I see how every moment, both joyful and painful, was a step toward God's plan for me. I lost many things along the way, my marriage, my comfort, and the world I once knew. But in that loss, I found something far greater. I found peace that no words can describe. I found Jesus, the one who gave my soul rest. Now, as I serve in youth ministry, I meet many young people who are lost, confused, or afraid, just as I once was. I listen to them, pray for them, and tell them that no matter where they come from or what they have done, Jesus still loves them. He never gives up on anyone. Every time I speak, I remember my vision, the hungry children in the mansion. I know that my mission will always be to feed them with truth and love. My heart aches for those who still do not know him. I often pray for my family back home. They still do not understand why I made this choice, but I continue to love them deeply. I trust that one day, the same light that found me will find them too. God's love reaches farther than any distance, stronger than any wall. To every believer reading or hearing my story, I want to say this: never forget to pray for unbelievers. Your prayers have power. Somewhere in the world, someone is searching, questioning, and crying out for truth, just as I once did. It may be your prayer that gives them courage to take that step toward Jesus. If you ever feel weak or afraid, remember that Jesus is near. He does not ask for perfection. He asks for a willing heart. He can use your story, your pain, and even your failures to touch lives you may never imagine.